Hello, this is Charlotte Wales's Muscular System PowerPoint. As a physiotherapist, it is very important to know about the muscular system of the body because it informs them on specific injuries and how to help alleviate this pain. It does many different jobs throughout the body. There are 6 main functions of the muscular system. These are movement, respiration, posture, heat production, constriction of blood vessels, and heart contraction. Movement is significant to the function of the muscles and is often most associated with the muscular system. Without it, these muscles will be unable to move, which is important in everyday tasks as well as sporting activities. These actions take place in the skeletal muscles, mainly located at our limbs. Respiration or breathing also happens because of the help from our muscles. The respiratory muscles are those that help with inhalation and exhalation by contributing to the movement of the thoracic cage. It includes the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. During exercise, these muscles are required to work harder as the body needs more oxygen, so the depth and rate of breath increases. Posture is also a very important function of the muscular system, as some of our muscles are never at rest, as they are helping us to sit and stand up straight. These are the muscles in our abdomen, pelvis, and back. They are highly important in helping us to have good posture. Heat production is another thing that muscles do. They help with thermoregulation, as when the body gets too cold, the muscles shiver to help bring the body temperature back to normal. If the weather is cold, it increases muscle tone, whereas if the weather is hot, it has a relaxing effect on the muscles. Constriction of blood vessels is when the flow of blood is restricted or decreased. This helps to retain body heat. Vasodilation is the widening of blood vessels. It results from the relaxation of smooth muscle cells within the blood vessel walls. The opposite process is called vasoconstriction, which is the narrowing of blood vessels. Heart contraction is probably the most important thing that our muscular system is responsible for. Without it, our hearts wouldn't beat. It's an involuntary muscle, so we don't control it. The heart circulates oxygen around the body, allowing us to move, respire, have good posture, and all of the other functions. There are 4 main characteristics of muscles. These are excitability, extensibility, contractility, and elasticity. Excitability is the muscle's ability to respond to stimulation that could be delivered by a motor neuron or a hormone. Extensibility is the ability of a muscle to be stretched beyond its resting state. Lack of extensibility is known as spasticity. Contractility is the ability of muscle cells to forcefully shorten. For instance, to flex your elbow, you need to contract or shorten the biceps brachii and other elbow flexor muscles in the anterior arm. These muscles can only pull, they cannot push. Elasticity is the ability to recoil or bounce back to the muscle's original length after being stretched. Muscles in our body need to have all 4 of these characteristics so that they can perform properly and to their best of their ability. Every day our muscles go through these actions without us realising it, but if we lost these abilities then we wouldn't be able to move or exercise in the same way that we do now. There are 3 types of muscle tissue. These are cardiac, skeletal, and smooth. The cardiac muscle is located in the myocardium, which is in the walls of the heart chamber. The smooth muscle is located in the tubes in the body, for example the digestive tubes and blood vessels. The skeletal muscle is found on bones, usually in the limbs, for example the biceps brachii and triceps brachii in the arm. The cardiac muscle appears striated, the same as skeletal muscles. They both also contain sarcomeres. Smooth muscle appears smooth, as the name suggests, and does not contain sarcomeres. Smooth muscle is uninuclear, cardiac is uni or binuclear, and skeletal is multinuclear. Cardiac muscle is a branching shape, allowing blood flow all around at a quicker pace, rather than through one high-pressure tube. Smooth muscle is in a fusiform shape, meaning that they widen and then taper off. Skeletal muscle cells are the longest of all the types of muscle tissue. They're in a cylindrical shape and can be up to 30 centimeters long. The cardiac and smooth muscles are both involuntary muscles, which means that we don't control them at all and they work automatically. We don't have to think about our hearts beating or digesting our food, as our muscles just do this for us. However, the skeletal muscles are voluntary muscles, as we choose when to move our body. The only time that it's involuntary is if it moves due to reflex. Similarly to the control of our muscles, the cardiac and smooth muscles do not fatigue and can carry on forever, but our skeletal muscles fatigue far more easily, which results in us becoming tired and unable to carry it. It's the main reason that not everybody can just run a marathon, and you have to train for it and build up muscle stamina. The cardiac muscle cells contain more mitochondria than normal, which allows for a greater energy supply. It's an aerobic muscle as it uses oxygen. The skeletal muscles are aerobic and anaerobic depending on whether or not it is moving by slow twitch or fast twitch fibers. This also controls the speed of the contraction made by the skeletal muscles. On the other hand, the cardiac muscle works at a slow but rhythmic pace normally and only increases when the heart rate is raised due to things like exercise. The smooth muscles work at a very slow pace all the time, and there is no increasing or decreasing their speed. To get to the anatomy of a muscle cell, you must first work your way through right from the outside of the muscle itself. This knowledge applies to all skeletal muscles, but using the example of the biceps brachii, you first have the entire muscle itself. This attaches to the scapula, which is the origin, and the radius, which is the insertion, by tendons, and completes the flexion motion in the upper arm. The origin end doesn't move, but the insertion end does. If we look at a cross-section of the bicep, then we can see the outer covering of the muscle, which is called the epimysium. This protects the muscle and it helps to prevent from friction that could occur from the muscle surrounding the bone. Then, inside of the muscle, there is another connective layer known as the perimysium. This divides up the inside of the muscle into sections called muscle bundles or fascicles. Depending on where you look inside of the body, depends what type of fascicle arrangements you find. In the biceps brachii, the fascicle are in a fusiform arrangement. They can also come as circular, which is found in the lips, convergent, which is found in the pectoralis major, parallel, found in the sartorius, unipennate, found in the extensor digitorum longus, multipennate, found in the deltoid muscles, and bipennate, round in the rectus femoris. Inside of the fascicle there is another connective layer. This time it is known as the endomysium. Each of the things inside of the endomysium are individual muscle cells which are also known as myofibers. These myofibers are multinuclear and they contain myofibril, which are the long threads found in striated muscles like skeletal muscle. Finally, the myofibrils are made of sarcomeres, which help the muscle to shorten. Skeletal muscles also have lots of blood vessels and nerves. This is because when the skeletal muscles want to contract, they must receive an impulse from a nerve cell. The blood vessels provide high levels of nutrients and oxygen to the muscle. The muscles are stimulated by the central nervous system, which runs from the brain to the base of the spine. After these muscles have moved for a long period of time, or if they are doing lots of short explosive movements, they tire. Different parts of the muscles have different roles. The agonists are the prime movers. These are the muscles that shorten to complete the action that is wanting to take place. They bear the largest workload and therefore produce the most force. They are responsible for the movement. For example, in the flexion of the arm, the biceps brachii are responsible for their contraction. The muscle working opposite the agonist is the antagonist. This muscle relaxes when the agonist contracts, which lengthens it and allows for the movement. They also help to prevent excess movement and injury so that the agonist doesn't lose control during the lowering movements. If the biceps brachii is the agonist, then the antagonist is the triceps brachii. The synergist muscle is the muscle that helps the agonist by adding force and stabilizing the movement. These muscles then work together to direct the movement and make it more effective. These synergists are located on either side of the agonist muscle. When the biceps brachii contract, the brachioradialis is the synergist. Fixators help to immobilize the bone around the area. They don't move, but they stabilize the joints involved in the movement. They are often located around the origin of the joint. In a bicep curl, the rotator cuff muscles are the fixators. The muscles all have an origin end and an insertion end. The origin end is where the muscles attach to the bone. This end doesn't move. In the biceps brachii, the origin is up the top of the arm connected to the scapula. The insertion end is attached to the bone by tendons, the same as the origin end, but this end can move. If both ends could move, then there would be no tension and the movement wouldn't be as effective. On the biceps, the insertion is at the radius across the elbow. Throughout the body, there are a few major skeletal muscles which are all under voluntary control. They work in pairs as the agonist and antagonist, and all of them have points of origin and insertion. These muscles are designed to move in a specific way, and they are each built for their purpose. These are the major muscles of the shoulder joint. For example, the anterior deltoid's antagonistic pair is the posterior deltoid. Its point of origin is the clavicle, so at the shoulder, and its point of insertion is at the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus, which is in the middle of the humerus bone on the upper arm. It is put into use when your arm is raised upwards, otherwise known as flexion. For example, when a bowler throws the ball in rounders. These are the major muscles of the radio-ulnar, elbow and knee joints. For example, the hamstring's antagonistic pair is the quadriceps. Its point of origin is the ischium, which is part of the pelvis, and its point of insertion is at the tibia and fibula, so the top of the bones and the lower leg. It is put into use when your leg is bent behind you, also known as the flexion of the knee. For example, when preparing to kick a football, footballers' legs flex to then extend and kick the ball, or it is used when completing a hamstring curl. These are the major muscles of the hip joint. For example, the gluteus maximus's antagonistic pair is the iliopsoas. Its point of origin is the ilium, sacrum and coccyx, which are all part of the pelvis, and its point of insertion is at the greater tuberosity of the femur, which is at the top of the femur. It is put into use when ice skating, as the motion of pushing to move forward engages the glutes, or an exercise that uses the gluteus maximus is squatting. These are the major muscles of the spine. For example, the internal oblique's antagonistic pair is the external obliques. Its point of origin are the lumbar fascia, inguinal ligament, and the back of the iliac crest, which is in the lower back, and its point of insertion is at the costal cartilage, which is part of the ribs. The muscle helps with the abdominal strength, so is used greatly in sports like rugby and other contact sports. Abdominal strength contributes to the stability of the lower spine. There are 3 different types of muscle fibers which are used for different types of movement. They allow you to perform in different ways. All motor units are the same type of fiber. They don't mix. Fast twitch fibers are thicker than fog or slow twitch fibers. This is because they contain many densely packed myofibrils. Slow oxidative twitch fibers have a thin diameter and a longer contraction speed, hence why they are known as slow. They also use oxygen to create their energy because they work aerobically. This means that their cells contain lots of mitochondria where respiration happens and oxygen is turned into ATP. To be able to do this, there must be a large supply of capillaries surrounding the fibers to allow for the carrying of oxygen in the blood. They also have less fibers per neuron than the fast twitch, and there is a darker colour under the microscope due to there being a high concentration of myoglobin. Slow twitch fibers have a low amount of PC stores. They don't need this instant energy as they work aerobically. This is also why they have low stores of glycogen. They can last for a long period of time before fatigue, so are used during endurance sports like marathon running or long-distance cycling events like the Tour de France. Fast glycolytic twitch fibers have a thicker diameter and a much faster contraction speed, usually 0.01 seconds or less, to help us complete explosive moves. They work anaerobically as they don't have the time to wait for oxygen. This means they need lactic acid and their cells contain very few mitochondria. Therefore, there is a smaller supply of capillaries surrounding the fibers as they don't need the oxygen from the blood to work. They also have more fibers per neuron than the slow twitch, and they have a paler colour because there is less myoglobin. Fast twitch fibers have high PC stores as they need the instant energy. This is also why they have high amounts of glycogen. Triglycerides are stored within lipid droplets in the muscle and can be hydrolyzed to produce fatty acids for energy production, so there is a high amount of them in fast twitch fibers, but a much lower amount in slow twitch fibers as they work aerobically. These fibers fatigue much more easily, which is why they aren't used in endurance sports. They are most prevalent in sports like 100-meter sprints, long jumps and shot put. FOG stands for fast oxidative glycolytic twitch fibers, and they are in between fast and slow twitch fibers. This includes their diameter being between the fast and slow twitch sizes. They have more mitochondria than fast fibers, but less than slow. A larger capillary supply than fast, but less than slow, meaning they take in more oxygen than fast twitch fibers. They don't tire as easily as fast twitch fibers, but they can't last as long as slow twitch. For example, in running events like 400 or 800 meters, these FOG fibers work in order to allow the body to run quickly, but without fatiguing too fast.